So I decided to dedicate my last non-Sonic video to a series I'm very familiar with, that being Dead or Alive. Yes, Sonic and Dead or Alive are two very weird things to be attracted to. Like, name one other person out there who can check both when discussing their top 5. Now, I'm totally not expecting any of my subscribers to watch this. I mean, why would my Sonic the Hedgehog viewers watch a long-ass video about one of the least essential fighters in the market today? Hopefully fans of DOA or those who are curious about the series catch this video and find something to relate with, because this is something I want to have on the channel. The series itself is sort of a hot topic at the moment, given the recent announcement of Dead or Alive 6, the long-awaited current-gen entry fans have been wanting for years. Just last year, Tecmo released an announcement that suggested the series would be put on hold until further notice, or as many have claimed, put to rest. This caused a lot of people to lose faith in DOA, some going as far as even to laugh at it. Pretty rough time for DOA fans. After the release of Dead or Alive 5, the series straight up pulled a Capcom by dropping an expanded edition titled Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate. This is nothing new for fighters, but you know. It only escalated further with the current gen version titled Dead or Alive 5 Last Round, which paired together are easily the most controversial releases. Here we begin seeing clone characters, the game was free to play, which kinda suggests the game wasn't doing well commercially, slight character changes, and DLC, good lord. If this game will be remembered for anything, it's the absurd amount of overpriced DLC costumes. Seriously, you'll get lost trying to find that one outfit you want to buy. You have to download the costume catalog, then the costume itself, the whole thing is just messy. The era of DOA 5 is an interesting one that ultimately led to this moment. Dead or Alive 6 was thought to have been a myth by many, but here we are. Jen-Li, Kasumi, Hayabusa, they all look great with current gen graphics. If there was any game I was looking forward to, it was this. But today we're not going to be looking at 6. I want to go on a nice little Dead or Alive retrospective. For the longest I've wanted to shine light on this series, which is widely known for sexy outfits and exaggerated body features. Those things are definitely there and hard to ignore, but I believe there's a certain charm to Dead or Alive that can be missed by just looking at gameplay. Oh yeah, first off, I don't claim to be a professional at this series in any sense. In fact, I kinda suck at a lot of video games. I don't go to tournaments, I don't rank high online or anything, I just play for fun, and this will be more of a DOA general overlook rather than anything super technical. My introduction to Dead or Alive was through DOA 2 on the Dreamcast. It was like a go-to game for my family, since it was the only fighter they had for the system. I didn't think too much of it, I just saw it as that one fighting game my cousin had, and that was the end of it. What stood out to me was the tag mode, which was easily my favorite part of the game, and honestly still remains one of my favorite parts of the series. It was simply fun and fast-paced combat. I became a fan when I picked up Dead or Alive 3 at a game rental shop. I knew about the series based on that past experience, and never tried 3, so why not try it? The game was only $7 if I remember correctly. Now this game I was addicted to, and the rest is history. A quick story overview because yeah, Dead or Alive has a story. A surprisingly in-depth, complicated story that can get pretty nonsensical and ridiculous at times, but it's a fighting game, so we forgive it. I won't explain everything, but just know that the main premise is a ninja by the name of Kasumi has ran away from her clan in an effort to avenge her injured brother Hayate. This is forbidden in the clan of Mugen Tenchi, so her half-sister and former friend Ayane is sent to kill Kasumi. Why aren't they friends anymore? Well, growing up, Kasumi would always get special attention, and Ayane was just that other kid that no one cared about. After finding out they are indeed sisters, Ayane becomes furious that Kasumi's family never accepted her. Pretty screwed up actually. Throughout the entire story, this clan is in conflict with Doatek, the main research facility behind the Dead or Alive tournaments. They do some sketchy shit behind the scenes and plan to create the ultimate fighter. This is done through cloning, using Hayate's body, all that. The first tournament takes place and the winner gets to face Raidu, Ayane's father and the guy who nearly killed Hayate. Obviously, this is what Kasumi wants, so she enters, and she kills him. From here, each game is another tournament or another reason for our main characters to progress. Aside from the main plot, you also get subplots with the other playable characters, such as the ongoing rivalry between Lei Feng and Jen-Li, a father-daughter conflict with Bass and Tina, Hitomi helping Hayate while his memory is erased, which sorta makes her obsessed with him, Genfu training Elliot, Zack trying to become rich, Helena taking over Doatek after the death of her parents, well, I guess that's like a major part. But anyways, there's actually a lot more to it, and I honestly like it. I'm one of 3 people who care about the story in Dead or Alive, and I have no shame in that. I enjoy the characters. I like seeing what they do. Sure, the plot does way more than it probably should, but the world of DOA has always captured my attention, and so many subplots can stem from it. When it comes to DOA, I have pretty much all of them if we're talking fighters. I don't have all of the different versions, like I'm sure 2 had mini releases, but I have access to all of the general games. Starting with Dead or Alive, a 1996 3D arcade fighter that is pretty solid. Developed by Team Ninja and published by Tecmo, DOA was the result of the company wanting a brand new fighter in the vein of Virtua Fighter, Sega's popular franchise. This is easy to understand since Virtua Fighter had a huge influence on the genre, kicking off the wave of 3D fighters to come. The game had a simple control scheme and was visually pleasing for the time. Enter Tomonobu Itagaki, a Tecmo graphics programmer who would soon become the man responsible for creating Dead or Alive. Requested to create Tecmo's own take on Virtua Fighter, Itagaki looked to make the game stand on its own while still having the engagement Virtua Fighter had. This included full motion capture, elaborate areas, and it's about as good as you'd expect. Definitely the worst entry in the series, but that's to be expected. As I said, it took influence from Virtua Fighter, which is clear by just looking at the gameplay, but introduced the series staple, which tends to set DOA apart from other fighters: holds. Dead or Alive really puts reversals in the forefront of its triangle gameplay, offensively and defensively. When you're not attacking in Dead or Alive, you're probably going to be figuring out how you're going to use your hold. Like all fighters, it's a bit of a mind game trying to solve your opponent. The game was very successful, critically and commercially. So despite me calling it the worst entry, that doesn't detract from its legacy at all. Dead or Alive became Tecmo's flagship fighter, and sequels obviously followed. Dead or Alive 2, as I said, was my first DOA game, so I have serious nostalgia towards it. 2 is also a favorite among people, which seems to be the case with a lot of fighters. But it's certainly for good reason. Dead or Alive 2 enhanced the visuals, gave better music, multi-layered stages, and most importantly, better gameplay. Everything a good sequel needs. We now have cinematic cutscenes that are unique to each character, something the series will use going forward. This really builds the world of DOA and gives purpose to its story mode. Characters no longer have that stiff arcade control, attacks are much quicker, more fluid, and feel a lot more satisfying to use. The version I have, and the one being shown here, is the Ultimate Edition, released for Xbox. This port is amazing. The game has never looked better, in some areas looking better than DOA 3. Granted, this version released 3 years later, so it's kind of expected. But because of that, it also looks very similar to DOA 3, which can make it hard to distinguish at times. I like this version a lot, but you certainly lose that unique charm from the original, so it's whatever you prefer. In addition to the visuals, it also adds Satomi, which you can't go wrong with. There's a lot to like about 2, especially the stages, which are some of my favorite in the series. 2 introduced the series staple of being able to send your opponents to another area of the stage, whether it's out of a window or from a cliff. Really fun thing to do in these games. I admire the intro movie, which includes music from Aerosmith, and the characters have much more costumes to work with this time around. This is something the series loves and definitely carries into future games. I almost forgot to mention the tag feature, which is again another huge part of DOA. In fact, it's probably my favorite mode to play because it makes it a bit easier to learn more characters quickly. Also, it's just really fun and fast paced. I guess another thing to note about 2 is because there is a graphical jump, the game really took home the sexual elements of the original and brought it more to life. So the trend kinda started here, I wanna say. Dead or Alive 3, a launch title for the Xbox. This is the first Dead or Alive game I personally grew to love. Here we have everything that made 2 such a fun game with even more characters to work with. Gameplay wise, to be honest, I feel 3 is the most unchanged in the series. Other than some minor damage outputs with holds and the introduction of tag attack changes, there isn't much different here, at least in the US version. I read that the Japanese version did add more character attacks, but 3 was a very safe entry. In fact, when I think about 3, I'm mostly thinking about the stages and cinematics. Dead or Alive 3 has my favorite character endings. They're a nice blend of serious and lightheartedness that you'd expect in an early 2000s video game. The cutscenes perfectly sum up the tone of the series at this point in time. Before the beach games, before the M rating, Dead or Alive was just a solid fighter with cool anime looking characters, and I think 3 highlighted this perfectly. Christy has a fucking panther. I love this game. So if you're looking for a solid 3D fighter for Xbox, 3 is a game I recommend for sure. If you're looking for a Dead or Alive game without all the excessive sex appeal and mature rating, 3 is also the game I'd recommend because it adds on to its predecessor without really damaging it. The series took a small turn after this. Before the inevitable Dead or Alive 4, there was another game, a sub-series within Dead or Alive. Now, this could have been anything. An action-adventure game focusing on Kasumi's runaway journey, or like a cool minigame collection with chibi characters or something.
Play with a friend, or play with yourself.
Well, it's volleyball. Okay.
Tecmo, 100% games.
100%.
Dead or Alive Xtreme Beach Volleyball. Now, this game is very interesting for a lot of reasons. Not for the gameplay itself, but rather the existence. Even before the series went with the mature rating and focused heavily on the sexual side of things, the females still had these eye-catching features about them. This is actually the reason Kasumi and Ayane never have their ages displayed. They're believed to be around 16 in the first 4 games, which, I mean, come on. So though I made 2 and 3 seem like they were kind of clean of that, the franchise still had a bit of a rep for racy women, which wasn't completely new because almost every fighter did. Where Dead or Alive distanced itself from the others was around this time, and especially with this new Xtreme series. The game features the women of Dead or Alive, including Lisa, who makes her debut here, and is basically a minigame sports collection. The main reason you're going to be playing this is for the eye candy, because the game itself is bare bones and not really all that fun or in-depth. For one, there's not much to do in the game besides volleyball, so I guess calling it a sports collection is unfair. I'd label the first game as a volleyball game. And that's all there is to it, really. The game actually takes place after Dead or Alive 3, but you wouldn't know that because Kasumi and Ayane can get along just fine. I know no one on Earth cares for plot logic in Dead or Alive, but these two still hate each other, or at least it seems, I don't know. But yeah, Xtreme was surely a turning point for Dead or Alive. The fact that a game pandering to the lowest denominator had to be made within a respected fighting franchise is pretty sad in my opinion. I couldn't imagine being the creator of Dead or Alive and doing this to my characters and franchise, but I'm sure something was to gain from this. Again, some people were already looking at the series as what Xtreme is, so I could somewhat see the appeal in a game that just goes all out with it. From my point of view, it just ruins whatever serious tone the series tried going for. Like, sure, I love women, don't get me wrong, but did I need to witness this ever? Honestly, I like the concept of the characters having fun on a beach. It's a unique idea for a fighting series. I just wish the game was more of a game. It could have had free roaming, it could have had better minigames. I think that would be pretty fun, like an up to 4 players type game set on an island. Instead, it's just a stare fest, which is fine if that's what you want. Though Xtreme is not a good game really, it must have went over pretty well, because the game launched a whole spin-off series. For each new Dead or Alive game, there seems to be a new Xtreme game, and they're all pretty much the same, only adding more shallow minigames. They also get more and more ridiculous with the sexual stuff, with 3 basically pushing to be a full-out adult game. No kidding, it didn't even get released over here. Pole dancing. F***ing pole dancing. I don't hate Xtreme, it has its place in gaming culture, I just can't give Tecmo money for this shit. I've never bought any of the games and don't plan to, not even for collection purposes, but it is a significant turning point to Dead or Alive, so I had to mention. Back on track, we have Dead or Alive 4, and I'm sure a lot of people have experience with this one since I believe it was the only 3D fighting game for the 360 around its launch. My first time playing it was through a demo at a friend's house, and I was so amazed by how it looked. Visually, the series has never looked better since we're now in the world of HD. The online was amazing, honestly the most fun it's ever been in my opinion, and there's a freaking Halo character. As I said, after 3, Dead or Alive became a M-rated series. Not for the same reasons Mortal Kombat is, but 100% for the character outfits and cutscenes. 4 really did away with the serious tone of 3 and went in a more light-hearted direction. A lot of the endings are just playful and the tone overall feels a lot different. You can feel the M rating in most of them. I don't really have an issue with it, I mean after Xtreme Beach Volleyball you can only expect this, but they're nowhere near as good as 3. Gameplay wise, characters do have more attacks and combos as you'd expect, but they mostly feel the same. 4 is infamous for being a very difficult game in general. A lot of this can be blamed for its tighter counter system, the lack of an easy mode, CPUs catching onto your patterns quickly. I definitely label it the hardest in the series. The final boss, Alpha 152, only solidifies this. My god, even with how experienced I am with this series, I still cannot beat her in one go. It always takes me like 3 or more tries. With the higher difficulty, DOA 4 really wants you to spend time with your character and learn them as much as you can. I respect this greatly. Sure, the game can feel cheap at times, but the satisfaction you get from mastering your character only adds to the experience and will make make you much better when it's time to play online, which was a huge section of DOA 4. Apart from the game looking great, it also has fantastic stages. I completely love the club arena and dinosaur jungle area. Dead or Alive 4 is very solid. Though a difficult fighter, it can be very addicting to play. It's also important to note that this is the last Dead or Alive fighting game that Itagaki worked on before resigning from Tecmo in 2008. Before we jump into 5, there was another game released for 3DS titled Dead or Alive Dimensions. I feel it's worth noting because it's fantastic. Not only are you getting the majority of content from the first 4 games on the go, and in 3D, you also get the really cool Chronicle mode. Since this marked the 15th anniversary of the series, the entirety of Dimensions serves as one huge celebration for Dead or Alive. With Chronicle mode, you get to relive the story of each game with new scenes and plot points that were never shown in the standard releases. The mode is designed really well since it teaches you the basics as you go along, while keeping you updated on why you're fighting certain characters in the first place. Now, with this being a fighting game, the cutscenes and dialogue can be tough to sit through at times. But for someone like me who's a fan of Dead or Alive, I appreciate the effort, because they certainly didn't have to do this. For anyone who cares about the plot of Dead or Alive, all 2 of you, Dimensions is the game you want to play. I'm guessing since this was on the 3DS, they couldn't really make the game rated mature, so a lot of outfits were toned down or cut completely. I said 3 was the last T-rated game, but I guess it technically was Dimensions. Dead or Alive Dimensions is a game I'd recommend to anyone, since it's certainly not as difficult as 4, has every character you can think of, and can be a really nice entry to the series, despite being on a handheld system. It's also a must-have for fans of Dead or Alive, since it really does feel like a huge celebration of the series. A last major point to make is Dimensions was actually the final game to feature the standard arcade anime-inspired character designs we've seen up to this point. After a pretty long 7-year wait, DOA fans were finally given Dead or Alive 5, which is the latest fighting entry in the series as of now. There are multiple versions and re-releases, but they're all the same game really. Talk about change. Biggest makeover to the series since Dead or Alive 2. Graphical styles, character designs, character moves, menu styles, all is different here. When the first bits of gameplay released, the eye catcher was the new character designs. It was weird to see. When you're so used to this, it can be hard to adjust to this. But I had no real opposition to it. I mean, we've had the old designs for years, and the series did all it could through 4 main entries. Which is why I respect Dimensions so much for concluding that era the way it did. 5 obviously continues 4, but on the surface looks like a total reboot. The game features numerous guest characters from Virtua Fighter, a series I have no experience with, but I hear is very good, and also the series that inspired DOA. With gameplay, a number of features were added, which can greatly change the experience. Critical bursts now take effect when performing combos, leaving opponents stunned and open for attacks. Power blows are character-specific moves that do a great deal of damage and interact with the stage's danger zones. Since they're basically your character's special move, they can only be used when your health is 50% or lower. They can be used in tag mode as well. The execution differs between characters, so you're gonna have to figure out which style is most comfortable. Another huge addition was the story mode. Yes, it's been a feature in almost every game, but the way we once knew it is now basically arcade mode. This new story mode really lives to its name and follows the path of Dimensions, being more story focused. You don't choose your character, you're simply playing along to the plot. I guess it's more comparable to Mortal Kombat 9 or Injustice. This is a huge move. For me, coming off of Dimensions, it appeared as though the series was starting to take itself seriously again, and it's only highlighted here, because honestly, I really like this direction. Also, like Dimensions, we now have the option of English voice acting, which can either make or break the experience. The voice acting could definitely be better, as some scenes are pretty hard to sit through, but this new take on the story mode is something I welcome greatly, and I hope stays going forward. I know people like the simple story mode, but honestly, there's only so many ways you can make that interesting. Sure, it's cool to only play through the stories of characters you care for, but I mean, we have arcade mode. 5 has the most characters, all of your favorite modes return, the online returns with new features, but sadly got rid of the fun customizable lobbies from 4. That sucks. And includes the most costumes to date. Finally, you can actually see the costumes before waiting for a preview. Something 4 didn't take advantage of, Dead or Alive 5 loves DLC. More specifically, Dead or Alive 5 Last Round. It's honestly ridiculous. I grabbed a few of them, but it'll take you hours browsing through all of the possible outfits you can buy. The standard version of Dead or Alive 5 is so great, and was everything I wanted it to be. You get a ton of content from the start, and it's very rewarding to unlock all the characters. The story is fun to complete in my opinion, and I grew to like the new designs very quickly. It didn't take long to adjust at all. In fact, it almost feels strange going backwards because I'm just not not used to that look anymore. The new characters fit the game and series well, I warmed up to them pretty fast. The stages are cool, I really dig the circus area, but I do think past games had better ones, like way better ones. Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate was the expanded edition for last gen consoles, and the last Dead or Alive game for last gen consoles. It added a few new characters, stages, and online tag. It's essentially what I believe 5 was supposed to be at launch. Ultimate would evolve into Core Fighters, a free-to-play version of Dead or Alive 5. Yes, this is all weird and confusing. Dead or Alive 5 Last Round, as the name implies, is the final version of Dead or Alive 5. It's the complete package. I use complete loosely since a lot of its content is DLC, but a number of DLC characters from Ultimate are already included in Last Round, so there's really no point to own Ultimate at this point in time if you have a current gen console. I guess if you prefer the yellow health bars. Last Round is very weird to me. Sometimes I love it, sometimes I hate it. The only reason this is weird is because it's Dead or Alive 5 with everything. It should be my favorite version of the game, but I don't know if it is. I honestly feel as if the whole DLC focus just kinda ruins the game for me when it really shouldn't. The DLC characters, though I don't hate them, they're just kinda there. Neo Tengu, that's my homie, but she's just a hot Tengu. Honoka and Marie Rose are very popular, but again, they're just DLC to me. Marie is definitely more understandable. She's the first and only small character, so it automatically makes her unique. Honoka I don't mind, but she looks so much like a fan-made character. Everything from her design to her moveset. Like if DOA had a create a character, someone would make Honoka. I'll never fully understand their popularity, but people like what they like. I feel Warriors All-Stars could have used better characters to represent DOA. Hayate, Kokoro, Ninja Hitomi, my god. The entire aura around Last Round and how it was handled kinda keeps me from favoring it or even supporting it. But it's simple to pick up and play and is easily the best Dead or Alive game. My favorite is probably still the standard edition since I put the most hours into it, and the game just felt a bit more focused in 2012. But that's all opinion, of course. So another thing that attracts me to Dead or Alive are the cast of fighters. We have everything from ninjas, wrestlers, karate experts, as diverse as you'd expect any fighting game to be. There's no kangaroos and bears, sadly. Tekken has a beat on that. I guess I can use this section to talk about my favorite characters. Back when I first started playing Dead or Alive 3, my go-to character was Kasumi. Very boring, I know. But I loved her speed. Her attacks were very weak, but the speed more than made up for it. DOA is already one of the faster 3D fighters out there, and there's always a thrill playing with the ninja characters. Ryu is my secondary because I generally favor the character, and his gameplay was also fun. In 4, I kept the same characters but added Hitomi for some reason, and really became attached to her. Something about Hitomi's moveset clicked with me, and she became my main for many years. I'd even still consider her my favorite today, though it's very close now. In DOA 5 Last Round, I really started picking up Ayane, and also began liking her as a character more. Playing games like Warriors Orochi 3 and the Ninja Gaiden series really connected me to her as well, so it's now a toss-up between Hitomi and Ayane. In 5, I didn't use Ryu as much as I thought I would, and I'm not sure why. Same with Kasumi, I rarely use her. Today my most used are probably Hitomi, Ayane, Elliot, Hayate, and Lei Feng, of all characters. There's so many others I love using, like Christy is good as hell in every game. La Mariposa is just pure fun, and again, Mila was a really great addition. I enjoy the whole boxing thing. Could never get into the wrestlers though. Like, how do you play these characters? Lastly, I want to briefly talk about the official film that was released. Yes, Dead or Alive got an actual live-action movie. As you'd expect, it wasn't all that good. The casting was pretty off in places, and the story was definitely not the same, but for what it was, I think the change made sense. The actual plot of DOA is so dense and very slow, so I'm not sure if anyone outside of DOA's fandom would care to watch that. If I can give the movie anything, is that premise-wise, it did a decent job of summing up the big parts about Dead or Alive. It had the tourney, it had a general bad guy using Hayate to create an ultimate weapon, Kasumi and Ayane hated each other, and beach volleyball, because that's a huge part of DOA, sadly. I like this movie, alright? It's obviously not a Scorsese, it's not a David Lynch, but I get excited seeing these characters in the movie. It's just pure fun to me. Yeah, it sucks characters like Bayman get butchered. Hitomi and Lei Feng are not even in the movie. The romance between Helena and Computer Guy was so unrealistic and very unnecessary, but it's fun. It has its funny moments. I like the chemistry between Tina, Kasumi, and Christy. Zack was portrayed pretty well. I wish that voice was the one used in DOA 5. Not great, but one of those few video game movies I revisit. I know this was a pretty long video, but if you're still watching, then you should know that I truly have a history with Dead or Alive. It's very easy to laugh at this series because it always jumps back and forth when taking itself seriously. At times, you get an amazing 3D fighter, other times you get games with those same characters being officially programmed into basically pornography. Both sides of DOA have supporters. Xtreme is over a decade old and is still going today, so this stuff is forever prioritized alongside these amazing fighting games. To many people, it's not a big deal since there are other games like Tekken and Soul Calibur out there to take seriously. But something about Dead or Alive has always appealed to me, and it's just bittersweet that a lot of people never really consider it a serious fighting contender. It has a great, simple to understand formula that makes for a competitive fighter. By the looks of it, DOA 6 is definitely going in this direction by toning down its sex appeal and focusing on the fact that it's a fighting game. I'm not angry about it, that's not really why I play DOA. Like, I'm not just staring at their chests the whole time. But it's a very controversial move given the series' history. It's an iconic part of DOA. It's gonna anger a lot of people. This video kinda came off as anti-sexy, but that's not where I stand. I'm fully aware it's always been a part of the series. It's part of the style, I find. It's kinda the added charm to Dead or Alive. Some of my favorite costumes show a lot of skin. But when it pushes itself as the main point of a series that takes itself seriously, that's kinda awkward. At that point, who do you recommend DOA to? It'd be different if the game never took itself seriously, like if it started out as this fighter with nothing but like bikini chicks or something that really pushed that sexual thing. But DOA has always tried fusing the serious world with this, so it's just a weird mix I find. I'm sure the costumes will still be there as always, and I imagine they're going to keep the fighting series on the serious side and push most of the fan service with Xtreme. Kind of like what they've been doing actually. To me it makes sense because like I said, DOA has balancing issues with its tone and appeal. It's like you can't have a serious conversation about this series with almost anyone. But hey, it's all about how you observe it. Every new Dead or Alive game that releases becomes my favorite fighting game of all time because the series is very good at progression and not getting rid of what made the past games good. I love Dead or Alive 5 to no end, and though I have my issues with how its DLC was handled, I have no doubt Dead or Alive 6 will live up to my standards, going by the past entries, and I seriously look forward to its release. Plus, I need to know if Lisa's alive. You can't kill off Lisa. She's like one of the most unique characters. Why? Why? For any fan of Dead or Alive, I hope you found something to relate to with this. And I'd love to know your thoughts on this series or a response to any of my points in the comment section. For any casual players who play Dead or Alive but don't really favor it, or those who are just interested in the series, I hope you find something to like about it. Here's to whatever future we receive. I'm just proud to know that this very odd series is still very much alive.
One of my favorite places to share a fantasy is on the phone. With someone I don't even know. Sounds like fun, doesn't it? I'd like to share my most intimate secrets with you.